Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back from my review of Black Clover chapter 286, which I am excited to talk about this week's chapter because we have official confirmation due to the flashback that takes up a majority of the chapter on which of the twin brothers from the Faust family is actually the Nacht that we've been following in the present day. Now, if you remember from my last video, I said that there was no official confirmation from chapter 285 that could really state one way or the other which of the twin brothers it actually was, because there was equal evidence for both of them. But in this chapter, we got official confirmation within like the first 4 pages on who it is, and I'm excited to talk about it, so let's just jump right into this chapter. Okay, so the chapter actually opens up with us going back in time a little bit more during the flashback, which is always a little bit weird when you go back in time even more prior to the beginning of a flashback, but still, we go back in time just a little bit more to when they were kids, and we actually get to see throughout the first half of the flashback, like a little montage of them growing up, and as we see this montage going on, we end up finding out that as they were growing up, Morgan was actually the one who everyone seemed to gravitate towards. Because of the fact that he was very cheerful, he was very helpful, he was very bright, which actually goes along with his magic attribute, as we find out in the first 3 pages, was actually light magic. So right off the bat, within the first 3 pages of the chapter, we pretty much already have confirmation that Morgan is indeed not the Nacht that we're following in the present day. It's actually the character who is actually named Nacht, who is the present day Nacht that we follow along. Now, of course, there's always the possibility of the fan theory being actually true, that maybe Nacht's magic attribute changed when, and I never really read too much on the theory, so I'm not sure, I might not be getting the details right, but I think the theory was that when he did the devil binding ritual, somehow that changed his magic attribute. I never actually read up on the theory because I never actually bought into it, so I might be getting some of the details wrong, but I know that is a theory that's been running around since pretty much the chapter where Jack kind of confirmed that he had different type of magic. But still, there was always a possibility that that actually could be true, but the ending of this chapter actually does kind of confirm that no, this is indeed the Nacht character from the flashback who has the dyed hair and actually has that punk rock look. Now, I gotta be honest, what actually kind of caught me off guard was the fact that in this chapter, during the flashback, we end up finding out that prior to Yami joining up with and by the way, in the fan translation that I read, which just has terrible translation, it basically calls them the Aqua Deer, but if I'm correct, I believe the Magic Knights that Julius was in charge of before he became the Magic Emperor was actually called the Grey Deer. But anyway, we end up finding out that prior to Yami and Morgan joining up with the Grey Deer, we end up finding out that he actually met Nacht first, and apparently the two of them actually were very close friends. They actually got into a lot of mischief together. And this was actually really surprising to find out because pretty much since Nacht's been introduced, anytime anything related to Yami gets brought up, he shows intense hatred. Like, even back during the training when Asta brought up surpassing his limits, that was one of the few times we actually got to see Nacht's eyes, and we see that he was extremely upset by Asta saying those words. So we know that he, without a doubt, hates Yami in the present day, which makes me wonder, how did they go from being such close friends when they were younger to being, hateful enemies, or not really hateful enemies, but people who don't like each other, or at the very least, Nacht doesn't like him in the present day. And I mean, even in the last chapter during the flashback, even though the two of them were arguing, we could tell that there was a little bit of friendly banter between the two of them. So again, what changed between then and now? And originally everyone thought that, maybe Yami had something to do with his brother's death. But as we find out at the end of this chapter, Yami wasn't even present when his brother died. He had nothing to do with it. So there's no reason for Nacht to hate him in that regard. So something must have happened between when Nacht joined up with the Black Bulls to the present day in order to make Yami hate him. And actually, now that I think about it, no, it had to be prior to that, because Nacht said that as soon as he joined the Black Bulls, he went off on the mission to the Spade Kingdom to basically infiltrate it because of the fact that he hated being around Yami. Actually, you know what? I just thought of a reason why Nacht actually might hate being around Yami, and I think it has more to do with Nacht and his personality or his mentality at the current point than it actually does with Yami, but I'll get to that when we get to the big review at the end of the chapter. Now, as the flashback goes on, we get to the point where Nacht actually gets his grimoire, and after he gets his grimoire, we then see his family actually come to him, and we end up finding out that Nacht actually is the favorite child of the family, not Morgan, because of the fact that Nacht's family, the Faust family, were just like Gordon's original family, or Gordon's family prior to his dad's generation, where they were very heavily invested in devil worshipping. And they, because of the fact that Morgan had light magic and he was such a bright, cheerful character, saw him as kind of the black sheep of the family because he would not be interested in doing the devil summoning. But because of how Nacht's character was, they knew they can get him to be their successor. And we end up skipping ahead to the point when they actually already formed contracts with the 4 devils that we see him have in the current day. Or at least we assume that's the 4 devils that we see him have a contract with in the current day, because they mentioned him having 4 contracts already, and he had just started learning on how to do it. So we can assume that's Gimodo and the rest of them, but again, we don't get an official confirmation in this chapter, and we never actually get to see any of their relics. And it's actually after he manages to form a contract with 4 different devils, again assuming it's Gimodo and the rest of the ones he has in the present day, that things get a little bit more interesting, but at the same time very confusing in the flashback, considering that we already know about a certain character. So after he forms a contract with, again assuming the 4 devils that he has in the current day, his family comes home with a brand new relic. And they say that this is a relic for the most powerful devil in the underworld, who has the power of space, time, and gravity. But the devil they're talking about is Lucifero, which is very interesting because of the fact that they say that he has the powers of space, time, and gravity. Which, as far as we were aware prior to this, Lucifero only had one magic attribute, gravity. Now we end up finding out in this chapter that he actually also has space and time on top of that. And at first, when I read this part of the chapter, I thought that because we get a different name for the devil in this chapter, I believe they call it Lucifagus or something like that, that maybe, and this was actually a crazy wild theory that had no real basis on any proof, but I thought that maybe during the devil ritual, maybe this original devil, Lucifagus, got split up into 3 separate devils once the ritual got broken up, which obviously ended up being, in my opinion, would have been Lucifero, Mechikua, and whatever the devil that Xenon is contracted to. Because of the fact that we know that Lucifero has gravity magic. We haven't seen any other type of magic from him besides gravitation magic. And we know that Xenon's devil has space magic or spatial magic. So that kind of fit together right there. But when it comes down to it, Mechikua doesn't have time magic, he has curse magic. So once I realized that theory got thrown out the window. But this brings up a brand new theory that maybe Lucifero is actually a lot more powerful than we all originally thought. Because of the fact that we've only seen him use gravity magic, but maybe that's the only type of magic that he's lending to Dante. Maybe he actually does have 3 separate types of magic, and space and time is something that he's going to be able to have access to once he's actually in the human world in his own physical body. Which, if that's the case, then Lucifero just became a much bigger threat than we originally thought he was. Like, he was already the most powerful devil in the underworld, as far as we were aware of. Now, on top of that, we know that he has 3 separate types of magic that they have not even seen him use just yet. This actually could be a big threat and actually could lead to the reason why Asta would need more help in defeating him than just being able to do it by himself with his brand new Devil Union mode. This potentially could end up leading to the moment I've been waiting for in Black Clover since the last arc, or the last big arc with the, elves who being reincarnated, when we found out that Zagred was the mastermind behind everything. I've always wanted a big Avengers Endgame level moment where every character from the series beginning to the end or the current point shows up to help out Asta in the big fight. And if Lucifero ends up being a big threat that I think he is going to end up being, we could potentially end up seeing something like that. At the very least, we could possibly end up getting the most powerful characters showing up, like the Witch Queen, Noelle, everyone basically showing up to fight with Asta against Lucifero within like a 60v1. Now, right before Nacht actually manages to summon Lucifero, I'm just going to assume that the fan translation is wrong and call him Lucifero from now on. But right before he actually manages to summon him, we get revealed that Morgan was actually one of the cloaked figures that was hiding behind his family during the rituals, which made me wonder, why did he decide to step in now during, I guess I understand the most powerful devil, that's kind of a big threat. You kind of want to stop that before it actually gets started. But at the same time, if he actually thought that the whole devil summoning thing was such a big deal, and it was such a blight on his family, and basically something that he had to stop as a Magic Knight, why did he wait until he was done summoning the 4 other devils? Why didn't he stop it then? It kind of blew my mind that he actually waited this long to do it, but he actually shows up and actually tries to basically stop them from activating the ritual, but he's too late because Nacht manages to summon Lucifero. And you know what? I couldn't help but laugh during the initial summoning parts because of the fact that as soon as Lucifero shows up, his presence is so menacing and so powerful that Nacht actually gets frozen in fear along with his family, and I could not help but think, well, what did you think? What did you think was going to end up happening? You're talking about the most powerful devil in the underworld. This is a far fetch from what you were already summoning, the low class devils that you're already summoning. This is like a big step from that. So what did you think that this devil was going to be like? You thought you were going to easily take it over like you did the other ones? This was going to be an uphill battle from the beginning. So obviously we could see that Nacht was not prepared for this. And you know what? Neither was his family, because as soon as Lucifero gets summoned, he immediately starts killing them off, which was actually kind of interesting the way he did it. There's smoke coming out of their faces, so it looks like he's kind of choking them to death with smoke. But if you're paying attention, you can actually see from the drawings, it actually kind of looks like they're aging at the same time. So I think this is him using his time magic to kill them off. But that brings into question, what's up with the smoke? Like, is that some like after effect of his time magic? Is that like their souls leaving their bodies? It was kind of confusing at first because of that. But again, you could kind of tell that he's actually aging them to death. Now, interestingly enough, he doesn't affect Morgan in any way. He doesn't actually try to kill off Morgan, despite killing off everyone else besides Nacht, because Nacht's inside the ritual circle with him. But anyway, after he starts killing off the other people, Morgan immediately goes in to basically break up the ritual by destroying the relic, which is a bracelet that Nacht has on his hand. And as soon as he breaks it, it immediately gets rid of the ritual, but also causes a feedback that actually ends up killing Morgan on the spot. But yeah, we end up getting this very sad scene, which even the fan translation, with how bad it is, manages to get right, where as Nacht is holding his brother's dying body, Morgan's last words to Nacht, as he's pleading for him to live, is that his dream was that the two of them could become magic knights and protect the peace in the magical lands as light and shadow magic knights. And then yeah, that's it. Morgan dies right then and there. Those are his last words. Now, there's a moment later on at the end of the chapter where it kind of hints that maybe something might have possessed Morgan during the whole thing. But right there, as far as we can tell, Morgan is dead. And Nacht is just crying his eyes out. He's blaming himself. He's praying to God to save his brother. And he's willing to do anything in order to save him. And then it's a little confusing because I don't exactly know what's going on in this part, but something while he's actually praying to God to save his brother answers back to him and says, do you really think after everything you did, you deserve any kind of reward? This is your punishment for basically going down this path. On one hand, I can see this obviously being Nacht's subconscious kind of answering back to him, saying that you don't deserve to be, praised or, rewarded for your actions. You deserve to lose everything and basically suffer for it. But on the other hand, because of the fact that, he did just summon Lucifero, maybe this is Lucifero answering back to him because he's still somehow connected to the human world. Maybe it's just before he actually ends up getting sent back, saying, hey, listen, you caused all this, now suffer for it. Or on the other hand, maybe he actually is God, because he does cry out to God, pleading with him to basically save his brother. Maybe God's actually answering him back, because devils exist, so there's nothing to say that also God and angels don't also exist in the Black Clover universe. So maybe this actually could end up being God who's answering Nacht in this moment. But yeah, it has to be one of those three things, either God, Lucifero, or Nacht's subconscious. And I'm kind of leaning more towards the first two things, just because of the fact that after we get to the end of the flashback, we get this close-up on Morgan's face. We don't get to see his eyes, but we kind of get this implication that during the conversation that Nacht's having with this deity that's talking back to him, that maybe Morgan's getting possessed. Like, it really just seems like the body's kind of hint towards the idea that maybe Morgan's body did get taken over by something, and the flashback's not exactly over just yet. But unfortunately, that's actually where it ends in this chapter with the flashback. And then we come back to the present day, and we see Nacht in the position we saw him back in chapter, I want to say 284. Yeah, chapter 284 at the end of that chapter, where he was pierced through by the icicles. And we see him basically, he's still actually, unlike what we saw in that chapter, still alive and kicking. And we see him say the phrase that he's been hating on since his introduction: it's time to surpass my limits. And that's actually where the chapter ends. But I actually want to go back to the whole conversation we were having about Nacht's relationship to Yami. And I feel like the ending of the flashback plays a big part into why he hates Yami so much in the present day. And I think it comes down to it at the end of the flashback. We see that Nacht fully accepts the fact that he is responsible for not only his family's death, but his precious little brother's death as well. So I think because of the fact that he's blaming himself and needs to accept that blame onto himself, that this is the reason why he hates Yami so much. Because, we know what kind of character Yami actually is. He is a very brass character. He's pretty much, for less of better words, an asshole. But when it comes down to it, he cares about the people that he's close to. And he does whatever he can to uplift them when they're bringing themselves down. We've seen it time and time again with each member of the Black Bulls. Each time someone's at a low point, he has always been there to basically lift them up and try to basically talk them into seeing a better side of themselves. And I think that when he tried to do that to Nacht, after Nacht actually revealed to him how Morgan died, Nacht probably reacted to that very badly. And because of the fact that Nacht wants to blame himself for his brother's death, I think that is the reason why he has such a hatred towards Yami. Because Yami tried to convince him, and almost possibly did convince him, that it's not 100% his fault. I mean, realistically, it actually is very much Nacht's fault. His family does take part of the blame, but it mostly is all on him. But at the same time, like I said, Yami is the type of character that, regardless of the situation, if it's someone he cares about, he is going to try to find a way to uplift them, actually try to make them feel better about themselves. Even when we saw, when it came to William, after William actively betrayed Julius and Yami thought that Julius was dead, he still didn't outright chastise William for his actions. I mean, he did kind of blame William, but he didn't outright chastise him, even though he had every right to. So, more than likely, when Yami actually found out about Morgan's death, he probably tried to basically make Nacht feel better, and because of the fact that Nacht doesn't want to feel better, he immediately distanced himself from Yami and has grown such a strong hatred towards him because Yami is the one character, well, Asta now too because he now knows Asta, but Yami was the one character who could possibly convince him that it was not his fault. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it for this review. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, drop me a like, subscribe to the channel. I would greatly appreciate it. Comment down below what you thought about what I had to say. Do you think that the reason why Nacht has such a strong hatred towards Yami is because of the fact that Yami was the one who was actually trying to convince Nacht not to fully blame himself for his brother's death, even though he does want to? Or do you think there's actually some other reason? Let me know in the comment section down below. But that's it for the video, guys. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, drop me a like, subscribe to the channel. I would greatly appreciate it. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.